everybody, it's Susan from the Newnan Carnegie Library. Welcome to Carnegie Cooks. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make my cornbread. I make it a little different than a lot of people, but it's a recipe that I really love. I make it for most of my family holidays and everybody seems to love it. It's a little sweeter than a traditional cornbread, but it's really delicious. I mean, my cousin looks forward to it every year. He's 10 years old and he's always like, I hope you're making your cornbread. So it's always nice to make something that the family really enjoys. So I'm going to show you how I make it. So these are the ingredients that I have to make my cornbread. I have vegetable oil, buttermilk cornmeal, milk, eggs, flour that's self-rising, baking powder, salt, and sugar. I also have two bowls, one larger bowl and one kind of smaller bowl, because I'll need two different bowls, and then of course measuring spoons and cups. So these are all of my ingredients. So the first thing I want to do is actually preheat the oven. So I've preheated the oven to 400 degrees, and while that's preheating, I'm going to get started on the first part of the cornbread. The first thing you want to do is put together the cornmeal and the milk mixture. So for this, you want to do 1.5 cups of cornmeal. I have this Martha White buttermilk cornmeal mix. I really enjoy this brand, but you can of course use any kind you want. So I'm going to do 1 cup. Put it in the bowl, and then I need another 1/2 cup. It's a brand new bag, so it's packed in pretty tight, so I'm just gonna loosen it up a little. I really like making cornbread, even though it's kind of baking, and I'm not always the best baker. I think baking's really a science, and you gotta be careful that you get the exact measurements or it could mess up. But I like to play with this recipe a lot, so I can change it around and it still tastes pretty good. So next I want to put in the milk. For this we need 2.5 cups. So here's 1 cup, 2 cups, and I'm using 1% low-fat milk because that's the kind of milk I drink, but it's probably better to use like a 2% or a whole. It makes it a little richer, but this works fine for me, so. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do is just mix it all together. Now what you wanna do for this is make sure as you're mixing it, you're kind of getting all the lumps out, because you really want this to be all completely combined together with no lumps, because if you leave lumps in, it's gonna not cook properly. It'll turn out to be kind of gross. So as I'm mixing, I mix, but I kind of like push the spoon up against the side to break up kind of the bigger pieces that like to stay stuck together, and just try to make it completely smooth and keep out the graininess of it, because the cornmeal can get pretty grainy, so I want to mix it up as smooth as I possibly can. Okay, so now I have mixed it all up. It's nice and smooth. There's no more lumps. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put aside the cornmeal mixture and we're going to let it set for 5 minutes. Okay, so while we're waiting for our cornmeal mixture to set for 5 minutes, we're going to start on the next part of it. So for this, we want to do 2 cups of flour. So we're going to grab 2 cups of this. That's 1. 2 cups of flour. And then we're going to do 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And I like to just not dump it in all at once, but kind of spread it around. So before I mix it, it's already spread around a little bit. And then we're gonna do 1 teaspoon of salt, and any salt will do. And I also like to spread that around too. And then we come to the sugar. This recipe I have calls for 2/3 a cup of white sugar, but like I said, I really like my cornbread sweet, so I usually add just a little bit more. So I'm gonna put in 1/2 cup, and then just a tiny bit more. But if you don't like something really sweet, then you probably want to just do less sugar. But I like a real sweet cornbread where it's almost like a dessert, but not quite. It just is how I prefer it. And then what you want to do is grab your whisk, and you want to whisk all these dry ingredients together. Make sure you mix it in nice and good so they're all combined. I really am excited for this cornbread. I eat cornbread warm, I eat cornbread cold. I love it with a good glass of milk. Oh, I just love cornbread. My grandma is the best cook ever, and I always enjoyed her cornbread going up, but she definitely made a cornbread that was not sweet. So my cornbread's a lot different from hers, but I really do like all kinds of cornbread. But for some reason, I just really prefer the sweet type. And so there's our alarm going off. So our mixture is ready, our cornmeal mixture is ready, and it looks like this is whisked enough. So let me go grab that. So once you have your cornmeal mixture and then this mixture that we just whisked together, what you want to do is in the cornmeal mixture, you want to put in your eggs and your oil. So I'm going to switch these. I just want you to see that. See, it's all nice and settled in after sitting for 5 minutes. So for this, what you want to do is you are going to need 2 eggs, and then you're going to need 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. And like I said, remember, put this in your cornmeal mixture and not your dry mixture. And then we're going to do our eggs. I've already washed them off. Don't forget to do that. And I just am going to put them in there. So here's my second egg. So now I put my oil and my eggs in my cornmeal mixture. So what I'm going to do is just mix it up. And make sure those egg yolks get broken and mixed up real nice. And putting the oil and the eggs in here really makes this mixture even smoother. You want it to look all nice and smooth, because once you start adding in the dry ingredients, it gets a little harder to mix, but this is kind of fun to mix all this up together. It's real smooth. So once it's smooth, you want to start mixing your cornmeal mixture into your dry mixture. So we're going to just put it all in. Make sure you scrape all the goodness out of the cornmeal mixture. And then we're just going to start mixing it together. And you got to do it a little carefully at first just to make sure you don't have any lumps. So I'm gonna start just kind of folding it over to make sure the dry mixture doesn't fall out of my bowl. My bowl's a little smaller. But once I have that kind of in there, I can start mixing it up a little bit better. And I kind of like to do a good hand motion. I kind of like to do a good brisk mixing right here, because it does take a little bit to get all the lumps out of here. And you want to scrape the bottom and the sides to make sure you're getting all that flour mixed in. I don't know if you can see it there, but I just kind of got into the side of it where there was a little flour lingering, and if you dump that in the pan, then it's going to be a little yucky when it cooks. So you just want to make sure this is all thoroughly mixed up. I really like to hand mix things. I don't use mixers very much. I do have a mixer, but I really like to do things by hand as much as possible, even if it does take a little bit longer. There's something really soothing I found about cooking a dish that I know how to make from memory, because most of the time I'm following a recipe, and sometimes I can get stressed out when I'm following a recipe, because I'll be like, oh no, this next part is going to take me 20 minutes to do, and I didn't read far enough ahead, and so now I'm panicking, and I've got 3 things going at once, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what in the world? But this cornbread recipe is one that I don't really have to look at the recipe that often because I've done it so many times. I usually just have to check and say, wait, what was the measuring that I have to do again? Just to double check and making sure I'm doing that right. But yeah, this is a really fun recipe to make, and I just find cooking soothing when I know what I'm doing and I don't have to panic and be like, oh no, I missed a step. But I really do like to follow recipes most of the time because I feel like before I started cooking, I was probably in my 30s, maybe mid-30s, before I really realized, oh, I can cook. I just have to follow a recipe. So I really do believe anyone can cook. So this looks pretty good. This is, it's pretty smooth looking. So I think we are done mixing this up. Okay, so on to the next step. First, take a look at that and see how delicious that looks. The next step is actually baking it. So you can use a cast iron skillet to bake this, or a baking dish, or what I usually like to do is just use these disposable kind of cake sheets. That's what I prefer. So all you do is you just pour it in, and it's very satisfying as it pours in. It's so smooth and looks really good, and I just want to scrape the last bits of that out, and looks so good. All right, so here we go. So we are going to put it in the oven. We are going to keep it in there for 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll see what it looks like when it comes out. Okay, so the timer has gone off. This has been in the oven for 30 minutes. So first we're gonna test it and make sure it's ready to come out and see if it needs to cook a little longer. I'm just gonna use this knife and stick it in here and see how it is. Looks like it came out clean, so I think it's ready to come out. So we're gonna grab it. Oh, and it's a beautiful color. It's a nice golden brown. Oh, it looks delicious. Really nice color. So, yay, it looks really good. So we're going to let it cool for a little bit and then try a piece and see what we think about it. Delicious. Okay, here's our cornbread. It looks really delicious. I like to cut off a corner piece. That's really good. I'm just gonna show this to you. Oh, it looks really delicious. So I'm gonna try it now. I've got a nice little glass of milk here. I really like eating my cornbread with milk. It just seems to bring out the flavor to me. Okay, we're gonna try this and see if it's any good. It's nice and crumbly like cornbread should be. That's good. That's real good. I really like it. It's not actually as sweet as I usually like it. I like it a little sweeter, but still, that's really good. Oh, I love cornbread. This is a great little meal to make. Cornbread is really good with anything. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I've had cornbread for dinner, just cornbread, but I also like it with green beans or with a big Southern meal. For Christmas, my family and I do a potluck, so we each bring different dishes. So this is usually just one component of the meal, but usually when I make it, I'll eat off of it for 3 or 4 days and just enjoy it with a glass of milk as a snack or as part of my meal. So I hope you've enjoyed learning how I make cornbread. I know there's so many different ways to make cornbread and so many different recipes, so this is just the one I prefer. But if you have a cornbread recipe, put it in the comments, or if you make this recipe, let us know, send us a picture, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of Carnegie Cooks.